Now, nobody won. Those are the written words from France's President Emmanuel Macron. His first comments on the weekend's elections here that have left three main blocs in Parliament. Macron putting the responsibility on Parliament to negotiate a broad coalition, as he put it, reflecting France's Republican institutions to break the stalemate. The left crying foul, though, as they are the biggest bloc in the Parliament.
It has now been 3 days since the results of the elections were announced, and no one has been called upon to form a government. There's no sign of any willingness to provide the beginning of a response to the situation.
Jean-Luc Mélenchon there. Well, Emmanuel Macron are now at the NATO summit, of course. There's attention elsewhere from those elections, so unlikely there's going to be any major changes in the situation here in France for several days at least. We're going to discuss the latest then with our international affairs editor, Philip Turle. Philip, so the French elections, a subject of discussion amongst NATO members, perhaps? What have they said?
I think that there is a huge amount of relief amongst the NATO members that Marine Le Pen, the National Rally, Jordan Bardella is not the Prime Minister of France, and that there was a victory for the left and the far left in the legislative elections last weekend. So probably some backslapping going on to Emmanuel Macron, relief that he has been not confronted with the idea of ruling with the far right. But there is definitely a feeling that this is just a situation that's been kicked into the long grass, and it all could come back in just a year or in 3 years' time in 2027 when the next presidential elections are scheduled here in France. And if it were held today, Marine Le Pen would certainly come first in the first round of voting. It's a sort of reprieve, I think. But there's been a lot of pressure on the French president even not to go to this NATO summit to sort out the problems here in France. I think he's gone for a couple of reasons. First one is to get away from all the shenanigans and horse trading going on in this country and all the criticism that he's been facing since calling these early elections. And secondly, to show that he is still the man in command. He's still Emmanuel Macron, the head of state, the head of one of Europe's most powerful nations, the head of a NATO country, a nuclear force as well, a permanent member of the UN Security Council. All of that is important. So he's gone there to underline the importance of France on the world stage. But those problems are going to come back to haunt him when he gets home again after this whistle-stop tour to Washington. He's only there for 36 hours, and they won't have gone away when he gets back.
Let's talk a bit more about this letter that he's written to the French people. He's keeping his Prime Minister for now anyway, isn't he, Gabriel Attal? And this letter is supposed to kind of set out a way forward?
Well, this letter was published in the local press yesterday and on the local radio network called France Bleu here in France, about 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon, basically ruling out, from Emmanuel Macron's perspective, any chance that he may agree to rule with either the far right, that's pretty much out of the picture now, or with the far left, the France Unbowed party of Jean-Luc Mélenchon, which is one of the four components of this new popular alliance, along with the communists, with the socialists and with the Greens. That has caused ructions within the left-wing alliance, particularly because they have been saying, well, we're only going to govern with all four parties together. We're not going to give in to Emmanuel Macron's whims and requests because he is in a position of weakness right now. So it's either the programme of the left or no programme at all. Then in the middle, you have Emmanuel Macron's group, which came second in the elections, saying, well, what we need is a government of national unity. You can't rule the whole country when there was no specific winner, which is what Emmanuel Macron has been saying, because no one got an absolute majority in the National Assembly. You can't run the country with just a programme from the left. You need a general programme which is going to appease everybody. So that is where we are right now. The horse trading is going on. All the meetings are still continuing between the left-wing alliance, the four parties, over who could possibly be Prime Minister. There doesn't seem to be anything coming out of that for the moment. But it is a very complicated situation for the French. And this is what Emmanuel Macron has been saying, basically, that what the French have voted for, the Republican front, the political forces must now put into effect. it is once this has been done and according to French Republican principles that I will choose a new prime minister. What the president is doing here is buying time for himself because he knows this is not going to be easy. And the other problem that Emmanuel Macron is looking at that is not easy is, well, we have the Olympic Games coming up. We don't want political instability during the Olympics. It's better if Gabriel Attal, the current prime minister, stays in office for the time being. We'll worry about a change of government afterwards.
And all, of course, this angering the left. You say, well, they came out top overall in these elections, so it should be up to them where the country goes and who the prime minister is. So who are the candidates for prime
OK, well,
minister?
there's a couple of candidates, I think, who are out of the picture already. One of them is Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the head of the France Unbowed, the far left party. I think he is definitely not in the running. He's seen as being too conflictual and too much of a character who scares the French, basically. There's also François Hollande, the former president. Difficult to see him being prime minister with the man who succeeded him in the Élysée Palace. That probably wouldn't go down too well. There's Marine Tondelier of the Green Party. She's seen as a compromise candidate who's up there with a chance. Clémentine Autain from formerly the France Unbowed Party. She's left that now and wants to devote herself to the new Republican Front. She is seen as someone who's a less divisive character in French politics than Jean-Luc Mélenchon, whom she was a big supporter of. There's also Clémence Guetta, who was Jean-Luc Mélenchon's chief of a programme for the elections. She is also one of the favourites within the France Unbowed. Pretty unlikely, I think, that she will get the job now. Olivier Faure, the head of the Socialist Party, he said he's ready to do the job, as has Boris Vallaud, who's also from the Socialist Party. He's the head of the Socialist group in the National Assembly. So those are all the candidates. One other person who was thought maybe who could be a possible prime minister is Gérard Larcher, the head of the Senate, but he's been on French television this morning saying he is definitely ruling that out and very critical about Emmanuel Macron for dissolving the National Assembly and causing all these political problems when he really didn't need to do that because his party could have stayed in power for another 3 years before the next elections are scheduled.
So many candidates, not one obvious.
Should know within the next couple of days or the next week, I think, who they finally agree on, if they do agree on someone.
On the left side, you mean? Yeah?
On the left.
Yes, exactly. As I said, even more complicated when you start looking at the whole Parliament. Thanks very much, Philip Turle, International Affairs Editor here on France 24.